1976 Los Angeles. Gang violence crackled in the air like cheap fireworks. 10-year-old Reggie Cole watched his older brother Kenny, a swaggering 15-year-old, pledge allegiance to the neighborhood's most notorious gang. It was a decision that would echo through their lives, a dark melody with a tragic coda. Just a few days later, the world turned sideways. A hail of bullets rained down, silencing the swagger in Kenny's every step. Reggie's idol, his brother, was gone, snatched away in a rival gang ambush. School became a hollow echo in the deafening silence of grief. The streets, the gang, the twisted loyalty they offered. That's where comfort, or maybe just forgetting, seemed to glimmer in the wreckage of his life. With his parents' separation tearing the family apart, Reggie was adrift. School dropped. Guidance gone. Soon petty crimes and drug dealing became his curriculum. By 16, arrests for weapons and resisting arrest were his trophies. It was not violent yet, but a clear sign Reggie was hurtling down a dangerous path. One wrong turn, one impulsive decision, and that path could lead straight to prison. Have you ever felt like you had no other options? This is the reality many young people face, especially those surrounded by gang violence. From the moment the bus carrying Reggie and other new inmates crossed the main gates of Calipatria State Prison in 1995, an atmosphere of dread and danger permeated every corner. The desert facility was essentially a graveyard for society's rejects, isolated from the outside world behind layers of lethal electric fences. Inside those walls, violence and brutality reigned supreme. Outnumbered 50-1, the severely understaffed guards had virtually no control over the unruly population of murderers, rapists, and gangs. Stabbings, beatings, and rapes were commonplace, a fact of daily life that new prisoners like 19-year-old Reggie had to adapt if they wanted to survive. The code of the yard was simple, might be made right, and alliances were everything. Calipatria's intricate web of prison gangs wielded more control over the population than the guards ever could. Each race, neighborhood, and set had their crew that new fish like Reggie had to carefully choose sides for protection. But one man ruled over them all with an iron fist. The king of the concrete jungle, who had earned the blood-curdling moniker El Diablo the Devil. At just 34 years old, Eddie El Diablo Clark had already spent 2 decades behind bars for some of the most heinous and violent crimes imaginable. His life of depravity began at the shockingly young age of 13 when he was first incarcerated for beating another teenager to death. Released at 18, El Diablo wasn't free. He was unleashed. Back on the streets, he tore a bloody path through rival gangs, racking up convictions for home invasion, assault, and murder like trophies. A cold-blooded monster, he reveled in the nickname El Diablo the Devil. Inside Calipatria's vaults though, the guards made a horrifying deal. Desperate and understaffed, they offered El Diablo a twisted kind of freedom. Run his drug racket, keep the yard in the line with an iron fist, and they would look the other way. It was a pact with the devil, a fragile order built on fear and bloodshed. El Diablo exploited his leverage to the fullest. He used fear, violence, and cruelty to control every aspect of life in Calipatria. Rapes, stabbings, beatings, all punishments meted out to those who disobeyed him or simply looked him the wrong way. No one was safe, not even his closest lieutenants if Diablo's drunken rages deemed it so. Can you imagine living in constant fear? This was Reggie's reality every single day. Reggie quickly realized that his only path to surviving Calipatria was to join a gang aligned under Diablo's umbrella. Not out of desire, but sheer necessity. He gravitated to the 49ers, a Hispanic gang with ties to the street crew he used to run with. Having their protection would mean avoiding the beatings, rapes, and other horrors inflicted on lone inmates. At first, Reggie was able to stay under El Diablo's radar, keeping his head down and not drawing any unwanted attention to himself. But that all changed in a shocking moment of defiance in October 2000. Have you ever been in a situation where the only way out is to stare down danger itself? Imagine a prison yard, tension thick in the air. A random search by guards uncovers a crude homemade knife. Suddenly, a booming voice erupts. El Diablo, the most feared criminal in the entire American prison system, points his finger right at you, accusing you of possessing the deadly weapon. Reggie Cole knew the score. Submit to the lie and he'd become a marked man, prey to be exploited by every thug in the yard, adrenaline coursing through his veins. A split-second decision hung in the balance. Back down or defy the devil himself. In a scene ripped from a prison movie, Reggie screamed, "No, it's not mine." His voice echoed through the yard, a direct challenge to El Diablo's unchallenged authority. There was no turning back now. He had just signed his own death warrant. The following weeks were a harrowing exercise in self-preservation. Every trip to the yard became a constant vigil, every rustle a potential threat. Would El Diablo and his goons make their move? Would Reggie survive the gauntlet he'd thrown down? It all came to a head one fateful day in November 2000. As Reggie stood in the yard, the hulking 6'5" frame of El Diablo emerged, lumbering directly towards him with chilling intent. The devil took one swipe at Reggie, slamming a shiv deep into his belly and threw him away like a rag doll. In that heart-stopping moment of blinding pain and trauma, Reggie's survival instincts took over. This was no longer a choice. He would either leave the yard in a body bag or find a way to fight back against the Satan who marked him for death. When inmates lined up to re-enter the prison, Reggie seized his only opportunity. With a smuggled shank concealed in his pocket, he charged at the unsuspecting El Diablo, burying the crude knife into his throat in a desperate act of self-preservation. In the chaos that ensued after Reggie's brutal attack on El Diablo, the guards had no choice but to place him in solitary confinement as they investigated. For Reggie, it felt like a living death sentence, not only for killing the most notorious criminal in American prisons, but also compounded by the wrongful life sentence he was already serving for a murder he didn't commit in 1995. 19, that's all Reggie was when a shoddy investigation and a witness with a bad memory landed him in the slammer. The evidence, a limp Reggie had from a years-old injury, somehow twisted into proof that he gunned down a man outside a brothel. His pleas of innocence fell on deaf ears, a casualty of sloppy police work and something far uglier. Now, years later, faced with the death penalty for killing the prison's most feared inmate, all hope seems lost. But Reggie's lawyer, a bulldog with a nose for injustice, was about to take a deep dive into the old case. What he'd find would be a bombshell that would shatter the very foundation of the legal system. After poring over thousands of pages of transcripts, photos and evidence reports, Reggie's lawyer Christopher Blood discovered a truth more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Reggie was telling the truth. He had been wrongfully convicted of the 1995 murder that put him behind bars in the first place. Blood's investigation revealed that the fatal bullets that struck the victim had actually been fired from an elevated position, not street level as the witness testimony claimed. This made it physically impossible for Reggie, who was seized solely based on being seen limping away from the scene, to have committed the crime. Furthermore, there was no physical evidence found linking Reggie to the shooting. No murder weapon, no DNA, no fingerprint or gunshot residue. The limp that witnesses saw was actually an old bullet wound from years prior that had nothing to do with the murder. 16 years, that's how long Reggie Cole spent behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. A murder conviction based on shaky evidence had stolen his youth, his freedom, his very life. But Reggie, with a crusading lawyer by his side, refused to be another statistic. Their case became a legal firestorm, the truth of a flickering flame waiting to erupt. After a brutal 3-year battle, the judge finally delivered the verdict that shattered the injustice. Reggie Cole was factually innocent. He walked out a free man, though no amount of money, not even the $5.2 million from the Los Angeles, could ever replace those stolen years. Justice, yes, but a bittersweet victory for a man forever marked by the trauma of wrongful imprisonment. Share this video to raise awareness about wrongful imprisonment and hit that subscribe button for more powerful true stories. Don't forget to like this video if you found Reggie's story impactful.